Good evening. You're watching the news from the Sultanate Oman Television. First, the headlines. His Majesty Sultan Haitham and His Highness the Emir of Qatar, through a phone call, exchanged cordial talks and aspects of existing cooperation between the two brotherly countries. The Board of Directors of the National Records and Archive Authority reviews Electronic Records and Documents Management System project. And the Military College celebrates the graduation of 2 new batches in various engineering majors. Those are the headlines, and now the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq Al Said received a phone call from His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of State of Qatar. The two sides exchanged cordial talks and aspects of existing cooperation between the two brotherly countries. His Highness the Emir of Qatar expressed his sincere wishes to His Majesty Sultan Haitham of great health, happiness and long life, and for the Omani people further progress and prosperity under the wise leadership of His Majesty. From his side, His Majesty Sultan Haitham expressed his thanks and appreciation to His Highness the Emir of Qatar for his good initiative and noble feelings, wishing him great health and happiness, and for the Qatari people further progress and prosperity under the wise leadership of His Highness. His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq sent a cable of condolences to His Excellency President Luis Alberto Lacalle of the Eastern Republic of Uruguay on the death of late President Tabaré Vázquez. Meanwhile, His Majesty the Sultan received a cable of thanks from His Majesty Sultan Haji Hassan Al Bolkiah of Brunei Dar es Salaam in reply to His Majesty's cable of condolences on the death of his son Al-Hajj Abdul Azim. His Majesty Sultan also received a similar cable from His Majesty King Norodom Sihamoni of the Kingdom of Cambodia in reply to His Majesty's greetings cable on the country's National Day. Shura Council office reviewed Council of Ministers' response related to hosting a number of the excellencies, the ministers. The office dwelt on the number of questions presented by members of the Shura Council on housing loans, contracts of school buses owners, educational qualification tests, increasing the number of the admitted students in English literature program, and the reasons behind the lack of employment opportunities for this specialization. The office also discussed requests for briefings on digital transformation agreement of the Ministry of Social Development. It also highlighted on shrimp farming project and the allocated budget for it. The meeting was chaired by His Excellency Khalid bin Hilal Al-Mauli, Chairman of the Shura Council. The 16th meeting of the Board of Directors of the National Records and Archives Authority reviewed the Electronic Records and Documents Management System project, WASOL. The project seeks to provide a system for managing electronic documents and records, unify electronic documents management policies, and increase the effective efficiency of government agencies in managing their government documents. In its first phase, the project includes 15 governmental agencies. The Board of Directors also discussed in its meeting a proposal to establish the authority's backup data center outside the Governorate of Muscat and the National Records and Archives Authorities planned for the next year. The meeting was chaired by His Excellency Salim bin Mohammed Al Mahrouqi, Minister of Heritage and Tourism, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the National Records and Archives Authority. The Military Technological College held a ceremony for the graduation of 2 new batches of students holders of bachelor and advanced diploma degrees in various engineering majors. The graduation ceremony included a visual presentation on education technologies used in the college, as well as the modern training means and equipment. The college stressed during the ceremony on the preparedness of the students to join the labor market after the qualification and training they received in the college. It also pointed out that it is keeping up with the changes in the field of education and training through electronic transformation and usage of modern technologies. The ceremony was presided over by Lieutenant General Ahmed bin Harith al-Nabhani, Chief of Staff of the Sultan's Armed Forces. Sultan's Armed Forces celebrated today the anniversary of the Retirees' Day, which falls on the 7th of December each year. The day commemorates the noble accomplishments and sacrifices made by military personnel on their line of sacred duty. Armed Forces Retirees' Day comes to award all those who have honorably contributed to build this nation. The celebration comes to mark the Retirees' Day, which is one of the royal grants of late Sultan Qaboos. May Allah rest his soul in peace, to honor this brave man who served in the Ministry of Defense and the Sultan's Armed Forces. On this day, speeches are delivered to congratulate the retirees and hail their long and dedicated services and sacrifices they rendered for the country. The retirees who dedicated themselves to perform their tasks and services are also honored. Under the wise leadership, along with the far-sighted vision of His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, the Supreme Commander, the Armed Forces will continue to provide these services for retirees and their families. Their great efforts and dedication will be forever remembered by those living in this beloved land. Still to come, our news bulletin. New kinds of wildlife animals and birds join the breeding center at the Wildlife Reserve in the Governorate of Al-Wusta. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman Television. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi today began a state visit to France for talks on fighting terrorism, the conflict in Libya and other regional issues. French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed el-Sisi at the Élysée Palace and is expected to raise human rights concerns among the other topics on the agenda. Days before his arrival in France, amid pressure from the UN and Western activists, 3 staffers of the Egyptian Initiative for Personal Rights who were detained in November following a meeting with diplomats from Western countries were released on Thursday pending an investigation charges of belonging to a terrorist group and spreading false news. Egypt is a US ally and has deep economic ties with European countries. French authorities see Egypt as a key country in efforts to stabilize the troubled region. And Macron has warned that in the absence of Western support, Egypt would turn to the West authoritarian rivals, China and Russia. President Donald Trump said his personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, has tested positive for the coronavirus, making him the latest in Trump's inner circle to contract the disease that is now surging across the U.S. Giuliani was exhibiting some symptoms and was admitted yesterday to Georgetown University Medical Center in Washington. The 76-year-old former New York mayor has traveled extensively to battleground states in an effort to help Trump subvert his election loss. On numerous occasions, he has met with officials for hours at a time without wearing a mask. Giuliani attended the hearing at the Georgia Capitol on Thursday, where he went without a mask for several hours. Several state senators or Republicans also did not wear masks at the hearing. On Wednesday night, Giuliani was in Lansing, Michigan, to testify in a highly unusual 4.5-hour legislative hearing in which he pushed the Republican lawmakers to ignore the certification of Joe Biden's Michigan victory and appoint electors for Trump. He did not wear a mask, nor did lawyer Jenna Ellis, who was sitting next to him. The novel coronavirus has killed more than 1,053,000 people since the outbreak emerged in China last December. More than 67 million cases of coronavirus have been registered. Of these, at least 42.7 million are now considered recovered. Over yesterday, 7,444 new deaths and 547,488 new cases were recorded worldwide. The United States is the worst affected country with 282,324 deaths from nearly 14.8 million cases. After the US, the hardest hit countries are Brazil with 176,941 deaths, India 140,573, Mexico with 109,717, and the United Kingdom with 61,245 deaths. Latin America and the Caribbean together have 458,949 deaths, Europe 445,425, Asia 200,226, the Middle East 81,607, and Africa 53,872 deaths. Koalas injured and rescued during the wildfires that devastated eastern Australia last summer have been released back into their habitat. The 14 koalas were injured in Victoria State's East Gippsland wildfires and were treated mainly for burns in large enclosures in Melbourne and in Hallisville. They were released back close to where they were found over the past month. Zoo's Victoria senior veterinarian Dr. Lena Wick said each koala was fitted with a tracking device on a collar so their progress can be monitored. Thousands of koalas died during wildfires in last South Hemisphere summer. A land artist in northern Italy yesterday plowed the face of Ludwig van Beethoven into a field to celebrate the 205th anniversary of the German composer's birth. Using an old red tractor, artist Dario Gambrin carved out a 225 square meters portrait of Beethoven. Gambrin said he hoped that Beethoven's Hymn to Joy will be an emblem of the new joy in life, along with the wish for an end to this terrible pandemic and the imminent arrival of vaccine. Over the years, Gambrin's land artworks have included portraits of Obama, Nelson Mandela, Pope Francis, and Leonardo da Vinci. Back here in the Sultan, the Minister of Health announced that the total number of COVID-19 cases registered in the Sultan reached 125,115, while the total number of death cases reached 1,452. The total recovered cases reached 116,506, which is 93.1% of the total cases reported so far. The Minister indicated that the total number of inpatients reached 147 cases, of which 78 are in intensive care units. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Youth, represented by the Omani Camel Racing Federation, signed an agreement with Occidental Oman Company to support and sponsor races in various governorates for the season 2020-2021. The agreement was signed by His Excellency Sheikh Rashad bin Ahmed Al Hinai, Under Secretary of the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Youth for Sports and Youth. The University of Technology and Applied Sciences and the Omani Intellectual Property Society signed a cooperation memorandum in the field of intellectual property. It targets the education field through awareness training and building the capabilities so as to contribute in the development of scientific research and inventions of students and researchers in the university, as well as to utilize them in serving the community in addition to preparing an environmental for research and innovation. It also allows the two sides to benefit from the available human and institutional capabilities besides the training facilities in the field of intellectual property according to the enforced regulations and systems in the university. A section of Omani Products was opened in a number of commercial centers in the Wilaya of Sohar within Made in Oman campaign. It is organized by the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Investment Promotion in cooperation with a number of bodies concerned and in coordination with the private sector. It aims to support the Omani products and industries, as well as to encourage the consumers in the Sultanate to buy Omani products, in addition to promoting the products through various media means and finding marketing outlets for them. New kinds of wildlife animals and birds joined the breeding center in the Wildlife Reserve at the Governorate of Al Wusta. The Environmental Conservation Office at the Diwan Royal Court clarified that the animals that were put in the reserve include antelopes, Indian gazelles, wild sheep, ostrich, greyhounds and kangaroos. Each step came in cooperation with the gardens and farms at the Royal Court Affairs, and they stress on the national effort seeking to increase the environmental researches as well as the expertise in the management of reserves, project and wildlife. It also aims to encourage tourism community awareness and students' knowledge in the environmental field. You're watching the Sultan of Oman television. Before we into tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Majesty Sultan Haitham and His Highness the Emir of Qatar, through a phone call, exchanged cordial talks and aspects of existing cooperation between the two brotherly countries. The Board of Directors of the National Records and Archives Authority reviews the Electronic Records and Documents Management System project. And the Military Technological College celebrates the graduation of 2 new batches in various engineering majors. And with that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin from overseeing the newsroom and the studios. Good night.